Okay, thanks everyone for joining. My name is Barbara Hernandez-Taylor, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager here at Azuga. I'm joined today by Nick Mora, who's our sales engineer, and he's going to be assisting me with today's session. Today, I'm excited to share a few stories about how leading fleets are using our GPS tracking solution to drive improvements in safety and driving behaviors. Before we get started, I'd like to take care of just a couple of housekeeping items. For those of you who are newer to the software we're using for this webinar, you should see a dialog box on the right-hand side of your screen. If you have questions during this presentation, please type them into the box and submit them. Nick will be helping me monitor the questions that are submitted during the presentation, and we will try to answer them as they come in. However, we will mostly save them for the end at the Q&A session at the end of this presentation. So to get started, Nick, can you move forward to the next slide, please?
Yes, Barbara. Give me 1 second. I just want to do one real quick, if you don't mind. Sorry to apologize, but I just want to do one real quick sound check. I'm going to unmute you, John, real quick. Just give me a quick check. And let's see here. Go ahead, John.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes,
we're good
can.
there. So I'll get you back on as soon as we're ready. Don't worry. All right,
great.
Go ahead, Barb.
Thanks, Nick. So here's a quick overview of what we plan to cover today. I'll give you a brief introduction into Azuga. Then we'll share 3 Azuga customer stories and how they've incorporated Azuga into their business operations and have really been able to achieve results around safety. We'll also provide you with a quick how-to product demo, and be sure to leave time at the end to answer your questions. So many of you in the audience are likely familiar with Azuga. However, for those of you who aren't, we provide a reliable end-to-end solution for commercial fleets, government agencies, insurance companies, and automotive industries. And we do that through our leading hardware technology, our integrated driver rewards program, and award-winning fleet applications and data analytics. Our mission is to help our customers turn data from vehicles and their use into intelligence that improves their operations and safety, as well as reducing risks and costs. We are headquartered here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and our founding team comes from world-class companies and Silicon Valley startups. Think of us as Detroit meets Silicon Valley. So over the course of the past few years, we've come to serve various different fleets of all sizes and industries, and here's just a sample of some of the customers that we work with. We serve fleets with as few as 5 vehicles to those that run thousands of vehicles, and we serve a variety of industries from HVAC to pest control to local governments and more. Our award-winning Azuga Fleet solution is used by thousands of businesses, and it's praised by our customers for its ease of use, robust features, and affordable pricing, and this has been a key driver of our growth thus far. So with that short introduction into Azuga, we're now going to focus on how top fleets are using Azuga to improve safety and driving trends. Specifically, we'll share the stories and experiences of the 3 customers and how our solution has helped them to improve safety and driving trends among their fleets. Today, fleets are up against several challenges when it comes to addressing and improving fleet safety. When it comes to safety, it starts by identifying unsafe driving behaviors and risky drivers. Which drivers are the most unsafe driving behaviors for your fleets? Who are the most risky drivers, and who are the safest drivers? To help you get an understanding of this, critical data is key, and you need to have access to the right data when you need it and how you need it. Once you have the right data and understand your potential risk, the next challenge is improving poor driving behavior and bad habits amongst your drivers. We are now going to share how our customers are using Azuga Fleet to address these challenges. So we're going to start today with Acree Plumbing and Air located in Florida. And John Phillips, Acree's service manager, has joined us today to share Acree's experience with Azuga and their results. John, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Barbara. Appreciate the introduction.
So John, to begin, can you share a little bit with us about Acree and your experience with other providers before you started using Azuga? You know, what was it about some of those providers that they weren't meeting your needs?
My first experience with Acree air conditioning, I joined, and one of the first tasks that was given to me by the president and the owner was to take a look at our fleet and ways that we can improve or things of that nature. So my first experience with the other providers was frustrating. From lengthy contracts and difficult installations to poor reporting and inaccurate GPS locations, just the return on investment was not there. And then I made a phone call to Azuga that changed everything.
And can you just share with the audience a bit more about your first conversations with our team here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had put in a request for more information on the Azuga website, and I had Corey, one of the senior service guys over there, reach out to me and just have a conversation. And that's all it started as, was just a conversation to see why I wanted more information and what could Azuga do for me that no other GPS company could provide. As we kept going and talking, a lot of what I wanted, he was just casually saying, yeah, we've got that. A lot of the reporting, a lot of the installation processes, all the way down to the nitty gritty, exactly what we wanted, he could provide right off the get-go. And I had a company that just fit everything that we needed right off the bat.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Next, we'd like to just learn a bit more, John, about how you're using the system. So, Nick, if you could move forward to the next slide here. So, John, just a couple of questions. Again, would just love for you to tell us about how you're using Azuga Fleet on a day-to-day basis with your team and what's had the biggest impact.
So the biggest impact to us was the savings, right? That's what everybody wants nowadays, is where can I save the most? And the single biggest factor that prompted a change was the cost of our insurance. We had 30 vehicles on the road in August of last year at a cost of over $200,000 for insurance, just to keep those 30 vehicles on the road. And we needed to change how we operated as a company to be able to save it as much as we did, and by using Azuga's accurate and in-depth reporting combined with a behavioral change within the entire organization, we approached our insurance to ask for a reduction in vehicle insurance. And by showing the insurance over the course of 9 short months, the amount of data and the improved driving tendencies, they were just completely blown away at how seriously we as a company took our driving. That was a big thing with the owner, was that we really had to take a look at what we were doing wrong in the driving field. And 3 years ago, we had 2 at-fault accidents. So as you can tell, that's going to raise the premiums, especially in a very congested, high-paced environment that we live in down in Tampa. Everybody goes 15 miles per hour over the speed limit as their cruise control, and that's the standard down here. So to break that habit with our drivers was tough, but we took our data and our spreadsheets and how we changed the drivers' behavior. We took that to our insurance adjusters, and they took all of the data and all of the spreadsheets that show all of our upward trends, showing it how something as simple as instantaneous feedback. So that beep that you get when the driver goes outside of the parameters that you set, they don't know it a week later. When you run a red light, you don't know it until a week or 2 later when you get the ticket. How many red lights have you ran in that time? With the instantaneous feedback, that really sets the bar for learning that behavior and correcting it in real time. And that's what they took back to their underwriters, and that was able to save us $80,000 in just 1 year of being with Azuga.
Wow, that's significant, John. For those folks that are joining today, I'm sure, many of them would love to see similar savings or more, from an insurance perspective. Was there one thing that stood out as, being the most influential in getting your insurance company to lower your rates? And obviously you mentioned you had a couple of at-fault accidents in the past. If you could just explain to the group a little bit more about, how that exactly worked, if you proactively reached out to them, and what, again, data was most impactful in getting them to, adjust your premiums.
Certainly. So once a year, we go to our insurance and ask them for a lower cost. The past couple of years, they say, well, unfortunately, because of the 2 at-fault accidents in 2016, we can't really do much for you. This year was a little bit different. We didn't have quite the reporting capabilities in our previous providers that we do with Azuga. And another thing that they loved was not just the instantaneous feedback. That was big. That really lit their eyes up when I told them that it's got that instantaneous feedback to the driver. But when we asked them to come down, we had a PowerPoint presentation ready to go, showing them that all of our tendencies are going in the positive. That there's no reason for us to have such a high premium when we are some of the safest drivers in the entire Tampa Bay area. A lot of that was convincing them to give us the time. And once we did, or once they gave us the time, they came down, they were blown away at how much data we can pull and proactively monitor on a daily basis. With getting that reporting, I can get it instantaneously. I'll get an email pop up, and in 10 minutes, I can call the driver and say, hey, listen, bud, you can't be hard braking like that. That's what leads to accidents. And that driver lets me know, hey, yeah, you know what, you're right, I heard the beeps. Listen, boss, I'll make sure I keep a little bit more distance. That's what really blew them away with the amount of data that you can really pull. And a lot of it is the biggest thing for them is the hard braking, because nowadays everybody is on their cell phone. It's just a terrible thing down here. They hold their cell phone up in front of them as they're driving. It's not even like discreetly like, hey, I'm going to hold this under my steering wheel so nobody sees. Some people down here just don't care, and they'll hold it right up in front of their face. That leads to hard braking, people not paying attention. One of the things that they really look for is that hard braking metric. And with Azuga, it tracks that very well, and it sets out a very clear and defined parameter of what is considered hard braking. They love that they saw that our tendencies for that have just been going down month after month after month. Even with the addition of more vehicles that we have being monitored, our hard braking scores and averages are still going down. So with the amount of emphasis we put on our drivers to change the behavior, that really sets us apart. And the insurance adjusters that came said, hey, we're going to take this to the underwriters. I think we've got a good case for you guys to save some money, some significant money. So that was hands down the 2 biggest factors, was the instantaneous reporting, the beeping in cab, as well as the hard braking metric showing us that we're actually doing very well at reducing the number of hard brakes per driver.
That's great to hear, and I'm glad, in partnership we were able to help you realize some of those savings. And thank you for just explaining to the audience, in a bit more detail what some of the key things were that really influenced your insurance company. And hopefully, others who've joined can sort of take some of these learnings and, go to their insurance companies as well and have conversations with them. So thank you, John, so much for joining us and for sharing Acree's story. It's been very helpful.
Well, thank you for having me, Barbara.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so we're going to move on to our next customer, Tribus Services, and let me tell you a little bit about them. They're one of our enterprise customers, and they're based out of Wisconsin. Tribus has been an Azuga customer since June 2015, and they provide end-to-end smart metering and utility services for electric, gas, and water utilities. They have about 500 to 800 vehicles, and this varies depending on their active projects. Most of those vehicles are Class 1 vehicles, and they consist of Chevys, Jeeps, and Fords. Kerry Wadelin is Tribus's fleet manager there at Tribus, and he, prior to using Azuga, some of the key challenges that he was facing were focused around enforcing a safety-first culture with his drivers in the field, limiting a device install downtime, and finding a solution that offered a flexible contracts and project-based invoicing. So according to Kerry, it's so easy to do business with Azuga. No long-term contract, a great customer success team, and we can ebb and flow with their plug-and-play solution. So now we're going to share with you a little bit about how Tribus is using Azuga and some of the results that they've seen. So Tribus Services employed Azuga Fleet along with the driver scorecards, and similarly to Acree, the real-time in-cab feedback with the buzzer device to call attention to their drivers' aggressive driving behavior. They also, as part of driver quarterly reviews, they share that information with their drivers, and they, coach and reward those who are doing well, and again, those that need a bit more assistance, they provide specific coaching to them. All in all, it creates a healthy, competitive environment. Additionally, this helps their supervisors understand which drivers are high risk and on the watch list, and these are the ones that they coach more closely. It translates into a safety measure that is used as a recognition tool as well. With the help of geofencing, safety alerts, maintenance alerts, and more, Tribus Services has seen a decrease in speeding incidents, accidents, fuel costs, idling, and hard braking, and you can see that this is reflected in their speeding score and other safety metrics. Their speeding trend compared to others in the same industry, you can see is far below that. And you can see how that's come down since they first started using Azuga and where they are performing today. Additionally, Azuga was able to help Kerry in addressing his challenges around invoicing. So Azuga provides an invoicing solution that makes the process efficient for them. The plug-and-play functionality has also allowed Tribus to do away with setup costs, which it's faced previously, and this has translated to a savings of thousands of dollars. At Tribus, safety is a #1 priority, and they are vigilant about it. They dedicate and ingrain safety in all that they do. This has helped Tribus win new business as well. A clean safety record keeps them competitively placed amongst other utility providers in their area. And according to Kerry, safety is incredibly important to the success of our business. Azuga has helped us positively modify driver behavior. And again, you can see here in this table that their overall score is 93.9, which is, again, one of the best in class from a safety perspective. So the last customer we're going to share with you today is Hobart Service. Hobart is one of our enterprise customers, and they've been with Azuga since April 2017. I'm going to share the story of Tyson Williams. He is one of the branch managers there at Hobart. He oversees the West Texas and Eastern New Mexico territory. When Tyson first joined Hobart Service, the company was using another GPS tracking provider. The company sought out another solution because their prior solution didn't provide the level of reporting that the company needed, and cost was a factor as well. One of Tyson's biggest challenges in managing his team and territory was knowing exactly where his team was at any given time. So you can see here per Tyson, it's been about a year since our company switched to Azuga Fleet. The old software does not compare. Azuga Fleet is much easier to use and provides great detail on reports for our vehicles. So now I'm going to just share a little bit about how Hobart specifically is using Azuga and how this is translated into improved safety for their fleet. So to start, the live maps available within Azuga really enable Tyson to know exactly where his team members are. He could place a call to them to find out their location, but having access to the live map just makes that much simpler. His dispatcher also has the same access, so when she receives an emergency call from a customer, she can pull up the map quickly and dispatch the team that's closest, providing a better level of customer service. When Hobart switched to Azuga, Tyson worked diligently to establish a safety culture early on with his team. He explained to the team the importance of the solution, and Tyson's team understands that they're being monitored, and he shares reports during their monthly reviews. His team is so bought into the program that they coach each other and school themselves and ask, each other, why are you slamming on the brakes, for those drivers with more unsafe driving events. From the charts here, you can see that Hobart, when they began using Azuga, they had a pretty good overall score to start with in the mid-80s. By switching to a provider that could provide them with a bit more data that they needed, they've been able to make a bigger impact on improving that safety score across their fleet. And you can see that there in the top chart for the overall driving score trend. With hard braking, you can also see that they've reduced that by 5% across their entire fleet. And as John mentioned in his story about Acree, hard braking is one of those key elements from a driving perspective. Eliminating one incident per 100 miles driven can actually reduce the risk of a preventable accident by nearly 17%. So this is significant. Lastly, one of the reports that Tyson uses regularly is the idling report, and that's because it breaks down exactly how long his technicians are at a customer site. What Tyson has done is he set an alert at 45 minutes and communicated to his team that this is enough time for them to complete the job, come back to their truck, fill out their paperwork, and head on to the next job. If a technician has been at a customer site for more than 45 minutes, Tyson receives an email alert and follows up with the technician to understand why they were idle for so long. And this really hit home for Tyson. According to him, the report that he uses the most is the idle report, and this is because idle time is wasted time, and that's time that we could be billing a customer or working on something else. So this is an additional benefit that Azuga has provided to Hobart service. So how to improve safety trends with Azuga. So here's what some of these customers have done, and we're going to give you a short demo on some of these items here in just a few minutes. So to start, they use the instantaneous alerts within the buzzer device. John spoke about this, and this is also something that Tribus used as well. This really alerts the drivers when they're in the cab to when harsh driving events occur, like speeding or hard braking. With our easy plug-and-play device, Azuga is able to capture all of the key metrics related to harsh driving events and provide fleet safety reports that enable you to identify areas where you should focus. And finally, with our free mobile app, Azuga Fleet Mobile allows your drivers to stay informed on their driver safety score and to also see how they stack up against others. Who's driving more safely than them, and really to incentivize them to reach the top of the leaderboard. So now we're going to show you how you can set up alerts, automate safety reports, and use Azuga Fleet Mobile with your drivers with a short product demo, and I'm going to turn it over to Nick.
Thank you, Barbara. I'll move on. Kind of before we jump into the practical part, I want to discuss one thing we mentioned. It may be something that you are familiar with as far as the product goes, but it may be one that you haven't seen or used before. One thing that that our Azuga devices, the newer ones, are all capable of, and many of the previous models, is an in-cab feedback buzzer. These buzzers it creates a kind of a high-pitch audio beep, if you will, for particular types of events, safety events. So we can look at things like speeding. This is the standard speeding, so if they cross a certain threshold of speed, they'll be notified. It gives them that sound, plus it actually will go every 5 seconds while they're over the speed. So it's going to get drivers to not only know that they're speeding, but also keep them aware of that during that time. Another one is hard braking. We've discussed this one kind of at length today. So if they're braking too hard, they're going to know about it right away. Sudden acceleration, it exists in the same model. So if they're taking off too fast from lights or accelerating too quickly, they're going to get that one. And then idling, though it's not necessarily a safety part, it's something that could be a huge savings for a company by reducing idling. In this case, it's going to, once they've crossed the idling threshold, it will also give them a regular feedback to let them know that they are idling outside of the company policy. The devices themselves, the buzzer is actually a very small piece that is right at the top. You can see the little rectangular area right above the, right where the vehicle connection is, and it produces that sound. One thing that we've noticed with this is that idling has gone down substantially. No one's going to sit in the cab of a vehicle and just leave it running while that beep's going off next to them. They can create real reduction very quickly. Hard acceleration, sometimes it's just a matter of not knowing what hard acceleration is. Some drivers just have a heavy foot, and this is going to make them aware of that. So it can reduce those events quickly. Hard braking in the same model. If drivers are braking too hard, they're going to hear about it. And then speeding, this is one where we can see really big reductions quickly because, once again, that device is going to continue making that sound while they're doing it in order to get them down to an acceptable speed again. So, and as far as the devices go, the best way to find out if the devices you have are capable of this, number one, is to contact the customer care or your Azuga rep, and they can let you know that part. If it's a matter of getting devices that are capable of it, we can definitely handle that as well. So yeah, let me jump over and I'm going to pull up our, and go right into the Azuga demo here. Of course. Apologize, guys, it logged me out. All right. So for those of you who are familiar with it, this, of course, is our live page. We always start here when you log in. You're always going to have your list of vehicles on the left and your map on the right with all of the icons clustered. A couple things. If we're looking for particular safety events or trends, one thing you can notice is that all the vehicles, as we zoom in, the tags on them are color-coded based on what the vehicles are doing at the time. So here's a good example. We can see two vehicles that are moving because the border on them in this case is green. When we're looking for vehicles that are stationary, they're typically going to be in gray with the border. And then vehicles that are outside of policy, so maybe they're speeding, hard braking, sudden acceleration, those types of things, in those cases, or idling, those tags will be in red. We do that so that at a glance you can look at the map and see exactly what your vehicles are doing. You can see who is outside of policy. On the same note, you can see that on the live maps in the chart here, where we can see things like speed or hard braking. Those things will pop up in red as well to let you know that there has been an event occurring. That's if you're looking at it. One of the things we like to focus on is making life easier for you so you don't have to be watching all the time. Something that's come to attention lately is actually working with the with alerts. So if we go to the admin tab, you'll see the alerts, and obviously what you're going to see is going to be based on your permission level within the company. But at the same time, one thing that we found with alerts is it's great to have them, but it's also more important to make sure that the alerts you're getting are pertinent, they're timely, and that they're going to the right people. Because one thing that's occurred, we've seen more big significant safety events happen. Oftentimes, you may have had a driver who was speeding often, but those alerts were going to somebody who disregarded them, or everyone kind of disregarded them because they were getting so many alerts. Just to give you an example of a speeding alert, one that comes up a lot, if we were setting up, say, a standard speeding alert, and what I did there was just click on the Add Alert button, and here I'm going to do speeding. So we can do a standard speeding alert in this case. One of the things that's key is the standard speeding alert is basically a threshold. So we're saying, I never want my vehicles going above this speed. So you want to set this somewhere where if a vehicle goes over this speed, you definitely need to know about it. In this case, let's say it was 80 miles an hour. I know that if any of my vehicles go over 80, that's definitely something I need to know about. We can decide, when we want that to be tracked. If we've got vehicles that are going home that we're not worried about after hours, we can change those hours and put custom hours in. The other side of that is determining which groups of vehicles this applies to. I may have smaller vehicles that I don't mind going, 80 miles an hour, but then I may have larger vehicles that I never want to see go over 65. We can set that based on the groups of vehicles. Then the next part about it is who's going to get these alerts, who's going to see them, how are we going to make the most impact with them. And we can set up how we want them to arrive. So we've got ways like, for instance, email. That's the one that most folks are familiar with. From there, we can decide if we want that to go, for instance, to the group admin. So if that particular group, whoever's the admin of that group is going to be getting that message. Another thing that we can do, and something that that a lot of companies like to do, if our drivers are using the mobile app, we can also have a paired driver get that message as well. So that driver, we may not even have the buzzers working, but that driver is going to be made aware you had a speeding event today before anyone has to contact them. And then they can see that one through the mobile app as well. So that paired driver, if they have their email and everything in there, they can either get an email, they can also get mobile messages. So then in the mobile app, we can have pop-ups where they're going to see that and they have to acknowledge it even, for instance, before it'll go away. So there's a lot of ways to set those up. And then, of course, there are the web-enabled ones, and you'll notice there's a little bell at the top. This is where your alerts would fall in that case. We've got different types that can be pop-ups, for instance, similar to the mobile, or we can see all of them. So we're going to see all those alerts coming in. The key here is making sure that the alerts you're getting are ones you need. There may be alerts that you don't really worry about, maybe an idling alert, for instance, or something that you don't need everybody to get. You can mute that alert so that way it's not coming out to everybody at the same time. But obviously making sure the right people are getting it is the key here, and make sure that it's coming to everybody in the right place. So I just wanted to make sure to show folks that part of it. And I do see a few questions coming in, and I'll definitely get to those as we go. The next part of this thing, and something we've mentioned with everybody, is reporting. Now, Azuga provides a lot of standard reports. You'll see them across the top of the page. There may be some based on the packages you subscribe to that you do not see on your screen. But I wanted to use a couple as an example here. Obviously, the summary report is one that I find is a very powerful tool for getting good, accurate information on a high-level view of your fleet. So when we look at a summary report, for instance, this is just going to be our demo fleet for the last week. These are all the Azuga folks. And give it a second. It's a lot of data. We've got a lot here. Okay, so here we can see all of our vehicles. We're going to be able to see how much they've driven, how far they've gone, how much they've been idling, and we can see that as a percentage of the time that they've been running. This is always a very important part of that factor, to make sure that folks are staying within prescribed policies. And sometimes it's kind of key to see how much a percent of their driving is actually spent idling. You can see information on things like total operating costs, fuel consumption, but I want to focus on safety today. And one of those things that we really focused on hard here is, and we mentioned speeding. So when we're looking at this one, you can always filter based on the information you want to see. We can also kind of categorize to be able to see, to prioritize certain events. So I can look at how many speeding events has each driver had within the last week. Now, our threshold's set at 65, so we see a lot more on our fleet than you would on a lot of fleets. But at the same time, you can definitely isolate who are our biggest offenders at any given time and how we can go about fixing it. We can also look at things like if you're subscribed to a posted speed limit, you can see how those drivers are comparing based on the posted speed limit. And I mean, obviously, you're going to see that those trends are very similar across the board. The guys who speed a lot on the standard speeding are also going to have a lot of posted speed limit incidents. Hard braking, one that we've addressed today specifically, those events, by reducing hard braking events and what we call hardcore braking events, if you ever want to know what they are, you just hover at a little question mark, and it'll also give you information about that one. And reducing those specifically will reduce wrecks. It will reduce, obviously, we're talking to John, it can really help with your insurance policy as well when you can show that demonstrably that you've made reductions in that area. And then sudden acceleration is kind of the last part of that picture, and it's something that you can see there as well. We can find out who our guys are that are taking off at every light as hard as they can. One thing that you can also do with any of our reports You can export them to PDF or Excel very easily. And you can also change what information you see in there as well. So there's a lot of different things you can change, add or subtract, to make sure the report you're seeing is exactly what you want. Now, there's separate reports for things like speeding, stops, idling reports, those kinds of things as well. But one thing I want to kind of touch on is, of course, our driver scores, so we can see how they've been doing for the last week, last month. We can see those trends over time. But you don't have to jump in and set up every report individually. If you'll notice, on the right-hand side, there's always one that says scheduled report. Here what we can do is actually take each one of these reports and we can set them up to run automatically. So we can make sure that we're getting that information when we want it. So here we can look at things like, let's say every Monday morning, I want a summary report for the last week in my box. So we can set it up. If I hit the schedule button now, I can decide which groups of vehicles I want it to go to. I can set it up for all of them, for instance. We can have it go to group admins. So if I set it up for the group admins, each one of them is going to get their particular level that they're going to get for that particular week. Then we set the frequency we want to run that report, whether it's daily, weekly, quarterly, even more than that. We can run year-long reports as well. And then what time we want to get them. So if we want to have it Monday morning, 7 a.m. every week, that's how we set it up, and it'll run everything from there back. And then, of course, you can set an expiration if you want to change it and determine whether you would like it in a PDF or Excel format for your reports. And look, we know that the reports we have here do not necessarily check every box for every customer. So one thing that you're able to do as well is let us know if there's something that you need that you're not seeing in a report that you have with us. We also are capable of doing custom reports. So we can fine-tune the information to make sure that you're getting the information you need. And many of our customers take advantage of this to make sure that they get exactly what they like. And you can select the columns as well for the reports. I didn't mention that, but deciding which events you want to see and which things are most important to you in those as well. Just wanted to make sure to mention that one. And then the last part of what we were talking about, we talked about driver scores and driver rewards. So of course we're able to see our driver scores, and I'm going to use the rewards tab here as kind of a way to, and usually what I'll do, I'll look at it kind of a longer term trend. So I typically look at it, for instance, a 30-day, and for all of my drivers, I want to see how everybody's doing. Visually, it's very easy to see where our top drivers are. They're in the green. These are our safest drivers. These are scores over 75. Once we get below that score, we're going to run into what we call our watch list drivers. These are folks who are kind of on the fence. They definitely need some work, but they're not in the highest risk category. Our highest risk drivers, these guys are going to be in the red here. These are folks who are statistically very likely to be involved in an incident, wreck, any kind of incident within the next, very short period of time. We want to address these ones very quickly so we can improve our driving scores. There's a couple ways to go about doing this. One of them, while we're looking at a driver score, you can always click on, for instance, a driver's tag, and we can get detailed information about what that driver's been doing that contributes to that score. We can see their total driven, how many trips they've taken, how many, or the score they get for a particular metric. So in this case, speeding, hard braking, so it's pretty much everything safety related could definitely use some work. Now, it's easy to go and, if you will, go after the drivers who need work, but the other side of that one is rewarding the drivers who do things right. So we can look at someone like Kaylin on the other side of the spectrum here who's doing pretty much everything right. We've got some really good scores here overall. Could use some improvement, but the highest score in the company. We can obviously fund our account here, and you're able to give rewards directly to your drivers that they can then use for gift cards and for other things as well. We do have a lot of ways to identify who's driving a particular vehicle, whether it be just assigning them or using technology, our mobile app, or even the we even have some no-touch kind of Bluetooth beacon cards as well. So we've got a few different ways that we can establish who's driving, so that way you can pick out not just vehicles but drivers to make sure that they're being acknowledged correctly and counseled correctly as well. One thing that's coming down the road, in addition to the Bluetooth beacon, or not the Bluetooth beacon, sorry, the buzzer devices that we have, is actually being able to give individualized coaching for all your drivers as well. And I'm just going to quickly touch on one more thing. This is our mobile app, and I've mentioned the driver scores, and I've talked about them quite a bit, but I wanted to show when your drivers log in, and sorry, there we go. When our drivers log in, one of the things they're able to see is their own score. It may not seem like much, but allowing drivers to see their scores gives them the ability to know what they're doing right and what they need work on. So a driver in this case can look at it and say, well, I've got a score of 80. What do I need to work on to get to a 95 or a 99? Here we can see hard braking and idling are the biggest parts of that equation. Now, that's one part of it. Having a driver be able to see their score, they know what they need to improve on. We can also allow drivers to see how they compare to other drivers in the fleet. This starts that peer pressure kind of environment where I always say the positive peer pressure, where folks can kind of see how they compare. And the simple human nature is that nobody wants to stand out as being the worst driver in the fleet. Drivers get the ability to improve their own skills. With some reward incentive, it can really be a powerful way to get everybody involved in the safety culture and improve scores across the board. So obviously improving scores can lead to huge savings in things like insurance and fuel over time. So I'm really glad we were able to have John here to kind of give an example of what that looks like for our customers as well. And yeah, I'm going to come back and get things back to Barbara.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap things up here and hopefully give you some time to ask some more questions. So just to wrap up here, here's some of the lessons that we learned from these fleets that we talked about today. So, early on, they established a safety culture and set clear expectations with their teams. They also targeted specific driving behaviors that they wanted to improve. And we were able to help them by providing them with actionable data and providing them with fleet-wide safety reports and records that they could use so that they can view their safety trends over time. And then lastly, they reinforced the safety message with their teams. So reviewing that either on weekly, monthly review meetings with their team, they recognized and rewarded good performance and then also used the data to, spend some time coaching those drivers who needed more assistance. So as we wrap up our session today, I just wanted to share with you a bit more of the statistics and stats on how we're helping our customers improve safety across their fleets. So this is based on some research we did at the very end of last year. And you can see here that for all of our customers who are using Azuga, 86% of them said that we are improving their driver safety, that we have also helped them reduce their accidents by 38% on average. And lastly, that we've helped them reduce speeding by 69%. And so we all know that this is all in service not only to creating a safer fleet, but helping to reduce cost as well. So with that, what we'd like to do now is open it up for questions. So if you haven't submitted a question yet, please go ahead and do so on the right-hand side of your screen.
And yep, and we'll go as quick as we can. I've got a few that already come in, Barbara. I think they're pretty useful. One of them was asking about the reward section. Hopefully I explained that one well enough for you. There was another one that came in about how we classify vehicles. It was about class 1, when we mentioned the class 1 vehicles. What we're talking about, typically their vehicles are kind of classified as class 1 through 8. And what we're talking about is light duty, what you consider cars or automobiles being in that class 1 category. Up to, class 5 would be your almost getting into the semi-trucks, and then class 8s would be like your really heavy-duty type of vehicles. So it kind of goes up from there through, half-ton, three-quarter-ton, one-ton vehicles, and then up from there as well. And there was a question about Bluetooth beacons from Alex, and that's one. Basically, what we have is, and we can talk about it a little more in detail if you contact your Azuga rep. But it's being able to have it's basically a card drivers can carry, and what they do is it connects to the GPS device in the vehicle by Bluetooth. So when that card is within the proximity of the vehicle when it's operating, it can show that person as an occupant in the vehicle. So we're able to do that one. So that way it's kind of a no-touch way of identifying who's in the vehicle while it's moving. And then couple questions. One of them was about the developer tab. That one's contacted Azuga customer support on that one. And then Yes, and one of the things we're going to do is definitely make sure everybody after this one will get links to our, we'll be posted on YouTube this entire webinar. So if you have to share with anybody or anything you missed or you'd like to see, and we'll make sure that everybody gets that part as well. And
so, Nick, were there additional questions that we received in, or were those?
The other one I got was about the buzzer devices and how they can get the buzzer devices the same way you would if you were at requesting any other type of service through customer care. And one thing I do want to just quickly touch on, and I'm just going to drop the slide for 1 second, is on your Azuga portal, one thing you'll see at the top, and this may look a little different for you guys, but there's an FAQ button. If you click on this one, this takes us to the Azuga Help Desk. This is a really powerful resource for those of you who want to either try things, you want to get into reports, you want to see how to do certain types of reports or what they're for. It's also great for learning about features that you may not be subscribed to, that you'd like to learn more about and see how they work. And we're always ready to help with whether it's demonstrating or providing all the information you need.
Thanks, Nick, for sharing that.
All the questions I have right there.
Oh. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So we are going to wrap. I know we are a couple of minutes over. So we thank you all for joining today. We hope that you found the customer stories that we shared helpful and took some lessons and tips away on things that you can apply within your fleets. As Nick mentioned, we will be sending a follow-up email, and it'll contain the link to the recording for today's session. It will also include a short survey, and we would really appreciate it if you could just take a few minutes to share your feedback on today's session, along with topics that you'd like for us to cover in upcoming webinars. So with that, thank you again for joining, and thank you, John, from Acree, for joining and sharing your story as well. We hope that everybody has a wonderful rest of the day and week.